Coach, 18 schools from New Jersey to the Pacific West Coast.
The Big Ten has 18 now.
The Big Ten has 18. But the Big Ten hasn't had 10 for a long, long time. I went out there for preseason camp to all 4 of the new schools, and man, there's some excitement out there. Administrators, coaches, players. 2 of the schools have new coaches. You have Deshaun Foster at UCLA taking over, first-time head coach, and then you have Jedd Fisch, who left Arizona and has gone on to the University of Washington. Let's talk about those 2. What do you remember about your first head coaching job at Bowling Green?
I remember it's good news and bad news. Good news is you're a head coach. Bad news, you're a head coach. And I can't imagine, taking over a program at a place like UCLA. I know Ryan Days did it, Bob Stoops did it with great success at Oklahoma. I always like to start at a little smaller opportunity to make your mistakes. And I remember very vividly what was going on through my mind. And I placed such a premium on a coaching staff. That was I spent so much time on that because, that's one thing I learned throughout my years as an assistant coach. You got a job to do, and your job is to let the head coach not have to worry about you or your position.
When you go from first-time head coach from year 1 to year 2, what happens in that year?
You said it earlier, and I love the way you said it. You said first-year head coaches are easy. You got a honeymoon period. You just got to win. I would always say win one more game than the previous staff. And then second year, you wake up and said, man, did I make some mistakes? Whether it was in hiring a staff, whether there's some personnel shortcomings with your players or other issues that you just weren't prepared for. And I always tried to have a guy on my staff. And when I lost those guys, Jerry, this is really important. When I hired a guy named Greg Brandon at Bowling Green. He's an older coach, been around the block a little bit. When I went out to Utah, I kept Kyle Whittingham, and he was he'd been around the block a little bit. And then I went to Florida, had Charlie Strong and Greg Madison. And these are older coaches or coaches that have been around that you can lean on and have a relationship with those guys. And thank God I did. I don't know who Deshaun, Coach Foster's guy is.
Right.
He better have 1 or 2 that he can really lean on. And I mean that are worried about him as the head coach. And, nowadays, everything's got so many different angles to it. I hope he does.
The other new coach in the new Big Ten is Washington's Jedd Fisch, who did a great job at Arizona.
Sure did.
And now he's at Washington. So when you went from Bowling Green to Utah, what was that like?
It's a step up, but it's not a gigantic step up. If I went from Bowling Green to Florida, you're missing that intermediate. And I consider Utah obviously a great job, but it's still not quite the top 5 program. It's a much better place than it was when I was hired in, 2003. So a completely different scenario. He's done it. He's done it very well. He brought most of his staff with him.
Right.
The issue I see with Jedd Fisch at Washington is they were dealt a really good hand the last few years. And they played in a national championship game, and a lot of their team's gone. It's much easier to take over a place that's really struggled than a place that, remember I told you, you get measured, you got to win 1 more game than the previous year.
You weren't a guy who went in and cleaned house without even talking to any assistants. You have kept assistants that worked for the previous head coach. Why?
Well, Sonny Lubick, when I was a young coach, I was on Earl Bruce's staff at Colorado State, and Sonny came in, and he was great. And I always felt I did nothing wrong. I actually recruited my tail off, and why would I get fired? Right. And I get it now, but that was, if I had maybe a vice, people criticize me for that at times. I only fired really 1 guy on my staff, and 17, 18 years as a head coach. I would always try, if that person did a good job, and I did my background work on them, I kept them if I could. Obviously dependent. The good thing is every place I left, one of my assistants took over. And so right. I never felt the need to have to go in and blow the place up. And you look who I hired now. I hired Tim Beckman at Bowling Green as a D coordinator, Kyle Whittingham as a coordinator, and then Charlie Strong as a coordinator, and they all became head coaches, excellent coaches.
Well, Coach Foster is a UCLA grad, so we certainly hope that he turns that thing around. The program was in good shape when Chip Kelly left, so he has something to build on. And Jedd Fisch had tremendous success at Arizona, and hopefully it'll carry over to Washington.